How does Europe compare with your experience of Asia and America?
Yeah, my observation is that the U.S. residential market is much more mature. The concept of apartments and large-scale apartment buildings and all that goes with it, professional property management, marketing, all the various elements, is a bit ahead of what's happening in Europe. But the demographics, the drivers are much the same. Our home ownership rate has been declining. Therefore, we've got a pent-up demand. There's been, due to the downturn, there's been very little new construction, although that is on the uptick. So you've got pent-up demand with a limited supply, and then obviously the attractive financial interest rate environments. Our rates are not as low as they are here, but certainly very attractive. So from an investment standpoint, there's been a significant flow of institutional capital into residential the last number of years. And there's no slowdown in that. It's very much the darling of property types in the U.S. today.
There are things that are different that have stopped you from coming into Europe.
There are obvious differences. Transparency is one. We were chatting with someone the other night about deciding which markets to go into, where to invest. And one of the observations was that in all sectors in the U.S., there's a high level of transparency with regard to transactions, operating data, ownership, very free exchange of information and availability of information. That's certainly present in other markets, but it's not present in all markets. The other challenge for us, I think, has been to really understand the nuances. And while you can come into a particular market, the various European markets, we've watched a number of our brethren from the U.S. come to the markets and try to adopt the U.S. model in Germany, for example, without necessarily taking into consideration some of the cultural differences. And some of those have not worked out as well as maybe they thought they would. Others have had great success. So I think there are differences, and certainly from a transparency, that's one, but also just operating fundamentals. The operating fundamentals are much different in the European markets for the most part. We spent a fair amount of time in the UK and London market working with an institutional investor trying to bring a US model to London. It was '08, so not particularly great time in terms of the cycle. But our team spent a fair amount of time, myself, in just understanding the differences and the areas of customer service and professionalism and marketing, and the different approaches are very different than in the U.S. And then trying to adopt that model from the U.S. to Germany or to London or other places, there's a translation, and how does it import? Does it import directly? It does not.
Is it more difficult for you to think about operating in Europe than it is for Asia, or
we currently operate a platform in Asia, primarily in Beijing as well as in Tokyo. It is a much different business model, and from my perspective, much more difficult for a whole host of reasons. But I think the European translation of our business model should be simpler for a variety of reasons, particularly in China. I have China running through my head. One of the other comments a gentleman made the other day, it was actually a Dutch investor. The comment was not just transparency, but also the level of integrity in certain markets. And many of you may be doing business in Asia. Certainly in many of those markets, there's a level of or a lack of integrity in some of those markets that we are very uncomfortable with, and I think most institutional investors are uncomfortable with. It's been referred to as the Chinese way, which is very different for us.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, and it's been challenging. We're there, and we're doing well, but it certainly has been a learning curve over probably 7 years now, maybe 8, going on 8 years.